the internet is literally losing its right now, right? We are literally talking a day or so away from, what day is it? Today is the 18th. One day away from the expected ban on TikTok. Who knows what's going to happen with that? But I think the conversation that we're having is awesome, because one of the things that we're doing is we're talking about different countries, what life looks like in different countries. There are people who are literally migrating to the Red app, a Chinese owned app. And we're getting this inside view of China, and the reaction is priceless. In this video, we're going to talk about what you learn as an expat once you start traveling, the things that you learn. My name is Tanisha Mercer. I help Black women move abroad. I've been in Paris for more than 2 years now. Please subscribe, share, and like this video. So let's get into it. So one of the things that has been amazing about this whole entire conversation is I'm on Threads, I'm on a couple other social media outlets, and I'm seeing Chinese people talking to Americans. I'm seeing Americans talking to Chinese people who have joined this particular app, right? And the conversations are mind-blowing. So you realize how much propaganda that you're actually fed. And it isn't until you start traveling, it's not until you start traveling that you realize we really are fed a whole lot of propaganda. I remember years and years ago going to Cuba, and I remember being taught things about their late president, Fidel Castro, Che Guevara, freedom fighters, all of that. And I'm like, I never learned this. I remember, their perception, their version of history of the whole conflict in the 60s. What do they call it? The Bay of Pigs, the invasion, all of that. All of the things that started the Cuba embargo, like before I was even born, right? It's amazing to hear that side of the story. Their side, their perception, because we only hear the American one. If you are in America, right? For years, we have been told that America is the greatest country on earth. No other country matters. America is where it's at. We have the most, the best, and the most of everything. And it isn't until you go to other places and you travel and you live other places that you realize, hold on, somebody was lying. Somebody was lying. It's not that America is better. America is different. Other places are different. Other places have different values. And that's one of the conversations I think that you don't realize until you start being in these global travel streets, until you start moving around, traveling around, visiting places and seeing how people live. One of the lessons, the unfortunate lessons I think that I have learned is that America thrives and runs on capitalism. And so other countries are not like that. You come to France, for example, where I am, and you realize that your healthcare is not tied to your employment. Okay. You realize that there is job security here. They do pay a lot of taxes, yes. But do you realize that in France, if you are unemployed, you get almost up to 2 years of your salary on unemployment, like 60% of your salary? Do you realize that in France, depending upon where you live, that housing is definitely thought of as a right, and that if you live in certain housing, if it is in any way connected to the government, I'm not saying government housing, but I'm saying if it's connected to the government in terms of who you pay, do you realize that your rent is adjusted if you lose your job? Do you realize that in France, people, if you are unemployed, you go to museums for free? Do you realize if you are unemployed, you get a discounted Metro pass? It is like a fraction of the cost, like 10, 15% of the regular cost if you are unemployed. Your healthcare in France is not tied to any job. You get healthcare whether you're working or not, because you get healthcare through the country, right? Through France itself. Do you realize that if you go to the doctor, you pay one bill. There is no super bill that you get in the mail later. There is no who's covered by this, who's covered by that, who's in network, who's not. No, you go to the doctor, you pay the fee. That's it. There is no surprise cost afterwards. You even get money back. If you are on the health insurance plan, you get money back. You get 20% of like the cash that you spent, of the amount that you spent on that appointment. And now there is an additional insurance you can get. It's called a mutual that may cover some things that maybe the government insurance doesn't cover. But you do realize that the things that you go to the hospital for in the US, even if you have insurance now, don't be uninsured. Don't be uninsured in the US, because that's a recipe for disaster and financial disaster and bankruptcy. Do you realize how much things cost, like having appendicitis? You can't plan for that. You can't plan to be in a car accident, right? You can't plan to fall down the steps and break your leg. Those are all things that if you don't have insurance can bankrupt you in the US, will leave you with so many medical bills. I mean, literally, from what I've heard now, they have, you now no longer, I think medical debt can't be on your credit report. And it's so totally changed and so totally different than what it used to be. But still, you realize that when you go to other places, healthcare is so different. Other countries, Costa Rica, France has one of the best healthcare, like I think number 1 or 2 outside of the US. You go to Costa Rica, leading healthcare. Right? You go to other places and things do not have to bankrupt you. You can actually get dental care. You can afford basic dental care without having dental insurance. I don't know about you guys, but when I had dental insurance in the US, it never covered everything. There was always, my deductible never was met. Or this is out of network, or this is out of your deductible. And I'm like, how? How? Right? It's always something. So the conversation is shifting, and I'm glad that it is. We have been fed, and you realize how much propaganda we have been fed, that the U.S. is the best country in the world. No one else is better. This is where the only place you can come and make it. And it makes you U.S. centric. The world is bigger than just the U.S. The U.S. only has a fraction of the world's population. You've got entire continents, Asia, Africa, right? With a whole lot of people with developed, and I hate to say developed, but you get what I'm saying. The propaganda is that these other places are backwards. They are behind technologically. Then you realize that that's not true. You realize that's really not true. Do you realize there are still parts of America that are just getting like internet service? And that's because of the federal broadband law. Do you realize there are areas in Africa, there are areas in Asia, in China that have faster, better internet than the US? Like, come on, y'all. So it's furthering the conversation, and I think it's a good thing to have. I think it's a good conversation to have, especially if you are interested in moving abroad. Now, if you're interested in moving abroad, make sure you click the link in the caption, schedule a 1-hour call with me. We'll talk about your move abroad plans, what you can do to jumpstart your move abroad plans in 2025, right? So, but yeah, I think that it forces you to think about things differently. When you see people on that app, that Chinese app, talking about how many people who are poor in the US, and how people are working, and the working poor, they can't catch up. They are working crazy amounts of hours. They can't raise their children. They're struggling, right? And you like a friend of mine told me the other day that eggs are like $6-7 a dozen, something with the bird flu there. And it's crazy when you look at the costs, when you look at rent inflation, inflation is like a 40+ year high. So people are literally not able to make it. And so you hear this narrative and then you go other places and then you see the same things that you pay for are cheaper. Food is cheaper. Food is fresher, right? Here in France, food is, now remember the conversion is different. The measuring conversion is different. Things are sold here in kilo and grams, right? So the conversions are a little bit different, but overall food is cheaper. It's fresher. I'm paying less for the regular stuff is like organic level quality in the US. Okay. And I'm paying less for it overall. Now the conversions are different. Sometimes in the US, the big packages, you're able to save more, but here it's different because the space, you don't have the space to store all that stuff in Costco. At least I don't. Okay. So, it's a little different, but I'm able to get fresher quality meats, no steroids, no antibiotics, no hormones, all of that stuff. The milk is steroid and antibiotic free, right? The preservatives are not there. You're not going to find no red dye here, baby. Oh no, you're not going to find it. So the Doritos, no, they're not going to have all that. Okay. The Skittles, all that, those dyes are gone. All those, cereals, breakfast cereals for kids that have crazy chemicals in them, you're not going to find that here. These are not allowed in this country. And so you go other places, and I don't want to just include, France, even though that's where I'm living. You go other places, you go to, Jamaica, you go to Costa Rica, you go to Colombia, you go to South Africa, and you go there and you taste the food and you realize what fruit really tastes like and what vegetables really taste like without chemicals, right? That are cheap, without chemicals, that are actually healthy for you. And you realize the food that you eat comes from in the US comes from 2 or 3 of the same companies, and they're doing all of the same things, putting all of the same chemicals in the food. This isn't a video to rant about that, but my point is we've been taught that America is the best, right? And so you will get a knee-jerk reaction from some people, especially people in your family and people that your friends, when you tell them that you are looking to move abroad, because they will often say, well, why do you want to leave here? Right? I'm sure you've heard it. Why do you want to leave the US? Are you sure? Then they'll hit you with, well, my ancestors lived here. I'm staying. Our ancestors did not have a choice, baby. They did not have a choice. I think about that sometimes. 100 years ago, my grandmother wasn't even born yet, but do I think that if she had a choice to leave, would she have gone? I absolutely believe she would. She left her childhood home at 19 to move states away. Do I think she would have moved countries if she had the opportunity, countries and continents? I absolutely think so. Okay. Our ancestors were there not by choice. We were brought there and forced to work and build the US economy. Okay. So I don't get with me personally. I'm like, we as a people have always moved around. That's the thing that people don't seem to get. People have always moved around. People being sedentary. Y'all remember the Bering Strait? Y'all remember that lesson in school? People walked. They walked and moved somewhere else. Okay. How were you going to get anywhere? People move. People move around. It's just when we think of America that we're like, oh, my such and such built this. I'm not leaving. Who said that you have to abandon everything that you have in America? We live in 2025. You can make money in America and spend it elsewhere. You can be bicoastal. You can be, not bicoastal, bicontinent, right? You can spend 3-4 months here, 3-4 months there. You can move around, right? You have that passport. You got that little blue passport. That's your key. You can move around. I definitely encourage you, any of you all watching this who do not have your passport, please get it. Excuse me. pay, what is it, 130, whatever. Get the passport book, not the little pamphlet thing, not the, get the full passport. Okay, with the deluxe passport with like the 50 plus pages. Don't get that little card. I know the card is cheaper. Get your passport. Get your passport. It is your key to moving around. Do what you need to do. Go on the government website. I'm not exactly sure of the process. I probably need to do a video about that because, having had my passport for 10 plus years, we sometimes forget that not everybody has their passport. The key is getting that passport so you can move around to see how the rest of the world lives. You will discover when you travel, you will discover that people are out here living their lives. And a lot of what we've been fed is nothing in America, is nothing but consumerism, is nothing but capitalism. You realize that everyone isn't just fighting and clawing to get to the United States. Look, I realize the opportunities the United States has. Okay, I will never deny that. Okay, but that's not to say that people are not happy in other countries living their lives. They're living very different lives. It doesn't mean that they aren't unhappy. We are fed this narrative that if you are not in the U.S., that you are suffering, you are struggling. That is not the case. I can tell you people are not suffering and struggling under the weight of being uninsured in places like France. I can tell you that. I can tell you that in China, homelessness is not a major problem. Have you gone to places like New York City, Atlanta?